You know, we rarely stop to ask ourselves what time actually is. We're always living in it, rushing through it, complaining about it. I don't have enough time. Time is running out. Give me more time. But have we ever paused, really paused to look at this thing we call time? Not the time on the clock, not the hours and minutes that measure our appointments and deadlines, but the psychological time that lives inside us, that creates this constant sense of pressure, of incompleteness, of fear. Watch yourself. Just watch. When you say, "I will be better tomorrow," what has happened? You have created time. When you say, "I was happier in the past," you have created time. When you say, "I am afraid of what might happen," you are living in time. And in that very creation of psychological time, fear is born. They are inseparable. You see, time and fear are two sides of the same coin. Now, I am not talking about the practical time we need to catch a bus or to plant a seed and wait for it to grow. That's chronological time, and it has its place. I'm talking about the time that the mind creates to postpone, to compare, to achieve, to become. This psychological time is the root of all our anxiety, our endless seeking, our perpetual dissatisfaction. It is an illusion, but an illusion with tremendous power over our lives. Let me tell you something. When you look at a tree, really look at it. Is there time in that observation? Gradually, but immediately, because the understanding itself is the ending of the illusion. You see, most of us think that freedom from fear is something we must achieve through time, through practice, through discipline, through gradual improvement. We say, "I am afraid now. But if I work at it, if I analyze my fears, if I practice courage, then one day I will be free." But that very approach creates more time, more delay, more fear, because it assumes that you are separate from your fear, that you are an entity that can work on fear, improve yourself, become fearless. But are you separate from your fear, or are you the fear itself? This is crucial to understand. The thinker is not separate from the thought. The observer is not separate from the observer. You are not an entity who has fear. You are the fear. When you see this, really see it not intellectually but actually, then the whole problem is transformed. Because then there is no one to escape from fear, no one to conquer fear, no one to become fearless. There is only fear happening now, to be observed completely, without judgment, without the desire to change it. And in that observation, in that total attention without the observer, fear reveals its structure. You begin to see how it arises, how it feeds on thought, on imagination, on the constant movement of time. You see how it's sustained by your resistance to it, by your desire to be free from it. And in that very seeing, without any effort to change what you see, something extraordinary happens. The fear begins to dissolve, not because you have fought it, not because you have suppressed it or transcended it through some practice, but because you have understood it completely. But understanding, you see, is not intellectual. It's not a matter of accumulating knowledge about fear or about time. You can read 1,000 books about fear. You can analyze it psychologically. You can trace its origins to your childhood, to your culture, to evolution done, yet remain completely afraid. Because intellectual understanding is still within the field of time. It's still the movement of thought, trying to solve a problem created by thought itself. Real understanding is immediate. It's a flash of insight, a direct perception that transforms you instantly. It's like suddenly seeing a snake in the corner of the room and realizing it is actually a rope. The moment you see it's a rope, the fear disappears. You don't have to practice not being afraid of the rope. You don't have to gradually convince yourself over time that the rope is harmless. The seeing itself is the ending of the illusion. Similarly, when you truly see, that psychological time is an illusion created by thought, that it has no reality except as a mental constructing, that very seeing, the whole edifice begins to crumble, and with it crumbles the fear that was built upon it. Now, why do we create this illusion? Why does the mind insist on living in time? Have you asked yourself this? It's not just habit, It's not mere conditioning, though conditioning plays its part. There is something deeper at work here. The mind creates time because it cannot face what is the present moment. The actual fact of what you are right now is often too painful, too contradictory, too chaotic for the mind to accept. So it escapes. It escapes into the past, into pleasant memories, into the identity it has built from accumulated experiences. Or it escapes into the future, into hope, into the promise of becoming something better, of achieving something worthwhile. Both are escapes from now. I'll give you an example. You're lonely. That's a fact. You feel this ache of isolation, this sense of being fundamentally cut off from everything and everyone. Now, what does the mind do with this? Does it simply observe the loneliness? Stay with it completely? Understand its full depth? No. Almost immediately, it wants to escape. It says, I must find a companion. I must join a group. I must become more sociable. Or it says, I remember when I wasn't lonely, when I had friends, when life was full. Do you see? In both cases, time has been introduced. The loneliness is not met directly, immediately. It is avoided through the projection of time. But what would happen if you didn't escape? What if you stayed with the loneliness completely, without any movement away from it, without hope, without memory, without the desire for it to be different? Society, culture, religion, they all reinforce this. They tell you that you are not enough. They give you ideals to live up to, standards to meet, goals to achieve. They say, be like this saint, this hero, this successful person. And so you spend your life trying to become something you're not, copying, imitating, conforming. And in all of this, there is time. There is fear. There is the constant anxiety of not measuring up. But have you noticed something? The people who talk most about the future, about becoming, about achieving enlightenment or success or happiness, they are often the most miserable in the present because they have rejected what is. They have denied the present in favor of an imagined future, and the present is all there is. The future is an idea, a concept, a hope. It has no reality, and yet we sacrifice the only thing that is real this moment for something that doesn't exist. I'm not saying don't plan. I'm not saying don't prepare for tomorrow in practical ways. If you have a family, you must provide for them. If there's work to be done tomorrow, you must be ready for it. But that's entirely different from psychological time, from living for tomorrow, from denying the present in the hope of a better future. One is intelligence, practical necessity. The other is escape, illusion, fear. Now, you might ask, but what about progress? What about growth? Don't we need time to evolve, to improve, to become better human beings? You see, this is the question that always comes up, and it reveals how deeply we are conditioned to think in terms of time, in terms of gradual change, But is there such a thing as psychological evil? Yes, there is technological progress, accumulation of knowledge, the refinement of techniques, but psychologically, So we come back to this fundamental question. Can the mind be free from time? Not the time on the clock, but this psychological time that divides life into past, present, and future. That creates the constant pressure of becoming, the endless fear of not being enough. Can you live without this burden? You see, the very question, can I, introduces time. It implies doubt. It implies a gap between the question and the answer, between the intention and the action. The mind immediately says, how do I do it? What method should I follow? How long will it take? And we're back in the trap, back in the illusion. But if you're truly listening, not just to my words, but to the truth behind them, to what is actually being revealed in your own observation, then the question answers itself, because freedom from time is not something to be achieved. It is not a goal, not a destination, not a state to be attained through practice and discipline. It is simply the ending of illusion, the cessation of the movement of thought that creates time, and that can happen now, not tomorrow, not through gradual progress, but immediately, in the flash of understanding. When you see a poisonous snake, you don't gradually move away from it. You jump. The action is instantaneous. Similarly, when you see, truly see, the danger of living in psychological time, the seeing itself is the action. There is no gap, no delay, no need for time. But you must see it yourself. I cannot see it for you. I can point. I can describe. I can invite you to look, but the looking must be yours. And that looking requires attention. Not the attention of concentration where you exclude everything else, but the attention of awareness where you are open, receptive, without prejudice, without the desire for a particular outcome. Try it now as we're speaking. Be aware of your own mind. Watch how it constantly moves from what is to what should be. You're sitting here, perhaps listening to these words, and the mind says, I should be more attentive, or I understand this, or this is difficult, or what does this mean for my life? Do you see how it never stays with what? It's always commenting, judging, interpreting, relating everything to the known, to the past, to the future. And in that very movement is time. In that very movement is the separation between you and what is happening. You are not actually here, listening, present. You are somewhere else, caught in the web of thought, of memory, of anticipation. And with that separation comes fear that you're not understanding correctly. Fear that you're wasting your time. Fear that this won't help you. Fear that you'll remain as you are. But what if there were no separation? What if there were just listening, just observation, without the observer, without you listening, but only listening happening? Then where is time? Where is fear? They cannot exist in that state of pure attention, of complete presence. This is not mysticism, you understand. This is not some esoteric experience reserved for the spiritually advanced. This is the most natural thing in the world. A child playing is completely in the present, completely absorbed, without time, without the observer. It's only as we grow older, as we accumulate knowledge and experience, as we become conditioned by society and culture, that we lose this capacity. We become split, divided. There is the self and the experience, the thinker and the thought, the observer and the observer. And in that division, time is born, and with time, fear. Now, someone might ask, but what about memory? Surely we need memory. How can we function without remembering in the present? It cannot exist in time, because love is not memory, not pleasure, not the continuation of yesterday's experience. Love is something fresh, new, every moment. It doesn't say, I loved you yesterday, therefore I love you today. That's not love. That's memory. That's habit. That's dependence. Love has no yesterday and no tomorrow. It is completely off now. But to come upon such love, the mind must be free from time. Not intellectually free, not through some technique of being present, but actually free, which means free from the accumulation of psychological memory, free from the constant reference to the past, free from the projection into the future. And the same applies to fear. As long as you carry the psychological memory of past pain, past hurt, past failure, you will project it into the future as fear. The man who has been betrayed once lives in fear of being betrayed again. The woman who has lost a child lives in fear of losing another. The person who has failed lives in fear of failing again. The past shapes the future, and the present is lost in between. But is it possible to meet life without this burden of the past? To meet each moment, each experience, each relationship freshly, as if for the first time, not by forcing yourself to forget, not by suppressing memory, but by simply seeing that the past has no power except the power you give it by holding on to it. You know, there's a beautiful... This may sound too simple. The mind, which is accustomed to complexity, to problems that require time to solve, may reject something so simple. It says it can't be that easy. Surely there must be more to it. Surely I must practice, must work at it must gradually learn to live in the present. But you see, the very desire to practice, to work at it, to gradually learn, is time speaking. That is the mind refusing to let go of its familiar patterns, its comfortable illusions. The truth is always simple. It's only our minds that are complex. We've made everything so complicated: our relationships, our beliefs, our search for meaning, our pursuit of happiness. We've created layers upon layers of thought, of knowledge, of experience, until we can no longer see anything directly, simply, clearly. We look at everything through this filter of accumulated time, and we wonder why life seems so difficult, so confusing, so full of fear and sorrow. But strip away the complexity, and what remains? Just this, just now, just being, without interpretation, without judgment, without the movement of time. And in that there is incredible beauty, incredible freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want. That's just another form of slavery to desire, but freedom from the known, from the burden of yesterday, from the anxiety about tomorrow. You see, we think freedom is something we must gain, something we must achieve through struggle and discipline. We think we are in bondage and must break free. But what if we are already free? What if the bondage is entirely self-created, entirely an illusion of thought? What if the prison has no walls, except the walls we keep building with our own minds, with our constant reference to time, with our identification with the past, with our projection into the future? A man in prison dreams of freedom. He plans his escape. He imagines what he'll do when he's free. He lives for that future moment of liberation. And all the while, the prison door is unlocked. It was never locked. He has only to stop dreaming. He stop planning, stop living in Taiman, walk out. But he cannot, because he's so identified with being a prisoner, so caught up in the drama of his captivity and his future escape, that he never looks at the actual door. We are like that man. We are so convinced that we need time to be free, that we must become enlightened, that we must work toward liberation, that we never see that freedom is here now, in the ending, elsewhere, looking ahead, looking for something more, something different. And in that constant looking away, we miss what is right here, right in front of us, right within us. The flower doesn't seek to be beautiful, it simply blooms. The bird doesn't seek to sing perfectly, it simply sings. The sunset doesn't seek to be magnificent, it simply is. Only the human mind seeks, because only the human mind lives in time, in the gap between what is and what it thinks should be. But when seeking stops, when time stops, when there is just observation without the observer, just awareness without the division between the aware and that of which one is aware, then you discover something that cannot be put into words. Not because it's mystical or mysterious, but because words are of time, and this is timeless. Words divide, and this is whole. Words describe, and this can only be experienced directly. Call it silence, if you will. Not the silence that is the opposite of noise, but the silence that exists when the mind is not chattering, not seeking, not becoming. The silence in which there is immense energy. Not the energy of conflict and effort, but the energy that comes when all conflict has ceased, when there is no longer any division between the thinker and the thought. In that silence, fear cannot exist, because fear is noise, the noise of thought moving in time, anticipating danger, remembering pain, protecting the illusory self. When the noise stops, when time stops, fear simply isn't there. There may be challenges, there may be difficulties, there may even be physical danger, but not psychological fear, not this constant anxiety that pervades our lives, this background radiation of unease that colors everything we do. And in that silence, you begin to understand what it means to live. Not to exist, not to merely survive, not to keep becoming, but to live completely, intensely, totally, in each moment, without the burden of the past, without the anxiety about the future, without the fear that has been your constant companion. This is not a promise of some future state. This is not something to work towards, to achieve, to attain. This is the description of what is right now when the mind is not caught in the illusion of time. It's not a reward for the virtuous, will become the past, but the now that is eternal, that is always present, that has no beginning and no end. The now in which there is no time, no fear, no division. The now that is life itself, in its fullness, in its beauty, in its incredible depth. Can you touch that now? Not tomorrow, not after more thinking, more analysis, more preparations, but now. Can you be completely here, completely present, without the burden of the past, without the anxiety about the future? Can you die to everything you know, everything you've been, everything you hope to be, and just be? That is the question. And the answer is not in words, not in time, not in becoming. The answer is in the ending of the question itself, in the silence that remains when all seeking has ceased, when time has stopped, when there is only this immeasurable, beyond fear, beyond sorrow, beyond the mind that creates and lives in illusion. That is all. There is nothing more to say. The rest is for you to discover, not tomorrow, but now, in the timeless present that is the only reality. Asterisk, asterisk, the end